everyone. I just wanted to take a moment today to talk about histamines and histamine intolerance, what to do about it, how to figure out if you have histamine intolerance, and just kind of what to do on the GAPS diet if you have it. Histamine intolerance is one of those things that is so common, like so many people have it, and it's really essential that you know about it and can figure out if you have it, because if you don't, the GAPS diet is basically going to be so hard for you. The GAPS diet has a ton of really essential healing foods on it, but a lot of these are super high in histamines. And so if you don't know you have a histamine problem, you're going to be going through the GAPS diet and your symptoms may be getting worse, or new symptoms are coming, or you feel terrible and you just cannot figure out what is going on. And there are like low histamine type chef dietitians, and their whole focus is on a low histamine diet, which is great. But I've seen a lot of articles they post on why the GAPS diet is the worst thing you could do for histamine intolerance and how it's so bad for histamine intolerance. So I just wanted to clarify that as well, because that's not true. They don't actually know how to do the GAPS diet. Maybe they've read the book, but they don't know how to implement it properly, and they don't actually know that the way to heal histamine intolerance is through healing the gut for a number of reasons that we'll get into. The GAPS diet is super adaptable. No one on the GAPS diet is doing the exact same thing, because there's always going to be food allergies or like intolerances, specific things you can't tolerate. Maybe it's peanuts because you have a mold issue. So people are going to go through the stages quick. Some are quicker than others, some are slower, and you're going to have probably different things that you run into. So when people say the GAPS diet is the worst diet for histamine intolerance, it's like, it doesn't really make sense in my opinion. And I get where they're coming from, and we'll go through all that, but just don't believe that, please, because the GAPS diet is super adaptable and is actually very, very, very beneficial on healing histamine issues so that you don't have them forever, and so that you don't have to do a low histamine diet for the rest of your life and follow these specific low histamine diets where you can't have anything. So anyway, histamine comes from the amino acid histidine, and histamine is obviously associated with your immune system response. If you've had hay fever, or you're allergic to pollen or dogs or horses or whatever, dust, you are very common with probably the red itchy eyes, watering eyes, sneezing, headaches, itchy skin, maybe like eczema, migraines, shortness of breath, and these are all histamine symptoms. They're symptoms of your immune system and histamine in your body. And so you've probably taken an antihistamine like in the spring, and you've seen all those problems go away, and I mean, that's awesome. But we want to work on healing histamine and knowing that histamine isn't necessarily bad. It's actually essential for your body, but we just don't want the overproduction of it, and we want the body to be able to detoxify it and break it down like it's meant to. So we have histamine in our body. We create it. We can create it from mast cells, which are a type of white blood cell, and certain bacteria can create it as well. We can also ingest it from our food. Every food has it, but some are a lot higher than others. And yeah, like our bacteria can create it. And then it's meant to be broken down by bacteria and certain enzymes, and it's meant to be detoxed through the liver. But unfortunately, everyone on the GAPS diet, everyone who has a gut issue, who their microbiome is messed up, and this beautiful ecosystem that's supposed to be working harmoniously is it's messed up. So you have an overproduction of yeast, you have too many pathogenic bacteria, not enough beneficial bacteria, too many parasites. It's just a mess. So in that situation, you're obviously not going to have enough bacteria that's meant to break down histamine. You're probably going to have too many bacteria that release histamines. Your liver is super overburdened by toxins, so you're not able to break down those histamines, excrete them properly, and you may be lacking certain enzymes. That's very, very, very likely. So you can do a lot of testing to figure out specifically what your histamine issue is. Like you can test to see if you have enough of the DAO enzyme, or if you have too much mast cell activation, or if you don't have enough of this bacteria, or if your liver is clogged or whatever. But I say just attack it from every side. And that's kind of what the GAPS protocol does, is going through the introduction diet, you're reestablishing your gut flora and you're healing that gut lining so that you have enough bacteria to break down histamine, and so that basically your body knows what to do with histamine, and so that it stops overproducing it, and it cleans up your liver, and all your detox organs are really working well. So now if you come in contact with histamine, your body can just break it down and excrete it the way it was meant to. So that's what we're trying to get to. We're trying to get to the point where your body's working really well and your gut is thriving, so histamine's not an issue. So what foods are high in histamine, and how do I know if I have a histamine issue? Well, I mentioned all those symptoms, but those aren't the only symptoms. There's a ton, and it could just be that the issue that you're trying to solve is sensitive and flares up when there's too much histamine in the body. So it could be that, but a good way to tell is to look up all the foods that are high in histamines. Like I said, I think every food has at least some histamine in it, but there's a long list that you can look up showing you the highest foods in histamines. And some of those, I'll go through a few of them. Fermented foods. So foods that are fermented with bacteria, that includes sauerkraut, the vegetables, the cultured vegetables, kombucha, beet Voss, all of those fermented foods, milk, kefir, yogurt, even good sources have tons and tons of that histamine in them. Wine, cheese, beer, alcohol, chocolate is fermented, teas are fermented most of the time, like black teas and green teas. So all of these have a ton of histamines in them. That pretty much rules out all the fun foods in my opinion. Like, okay, I already can't have all these foods on GAPS, and now I can't have all these foods as well. But the goal is to be able to introduce them again, but you just want to identify whether or not you have this issue. So like I said, find a list of all these foods. I listed a huge amount. Cut them out for a week, or have them very minimally. See if it makes a difference. If your symptoms really go down, that is a sign that you probably have some sort of histamine intolerance in your body, or you're producing too many histamines. And the good news is that can totally be fixed, and with the GAPS diet, we will fix that. But it's really good to identify it, and just to know that, okay, this doesn't mean the rest of your life you have to avoid those foods. We're gonna heal the microbiome, rebalance it so it has that bacteria to break down histamines so that you can introduce these foods without any problems later on. And long-term down the road, it won't even be something you think about, which is great. So now you've identified whether or not you have a histamine intolerance or a histamine issue, and you're sitting there and you're going, okay, great, now I have a histamine issue on top of all these other food allergies and the eczema that I have and the colitis. It's just one more thing. But it's really, really, really good that you know that, because it's going to make going through the GAPS diet a lot easier. So now what do we do? It's essential, if you have a histamine issue, to start on the intro diet. The intro is by far the most healing part of GAPS in general. It's not easy to do, but by having tons of that meat stock and introducing foods very, very slowly, you really are killing off pathogens in your gut by the loads. And introducing those fermented foods are reestablishing that healthy bacteria in your gut. Okay, but Heather, you just told me all those fermented foods are high in histamines and they're giving me this reaction, so what do I do? Okay, so you're gonna go through the intro diet. Keep in mind, everyone's version of the diet is gonna be a little bit different. Everyone has different microbiomes, different issues they're dealing with, different manifestations of those issues. So you're never gonna be able to find like the perfect exact thing to follow. A lot of it is trial and error. But you definitely wanna do the intro, really emphasizing meat stock, and you wanna make sure your meat stock is fresh. So make the meat stock and either freeze it in individual portions or have it in the fridge no more than 2 days. Any more than that and the histamines are gonna be increasing big time. So while on the intro, you're slowly introducing these new foods, and if you're having any reactions, you're gonna step back probably. And you wanna be introducing those bacteria because, like I said, those fermented foods, although they're high in histamines, they're also very necessary for healing. It's kind of like a short-term pain, long-term gain. The bacteria in sauerkraut and milk kefir and homemade yogurt and beet Voss and all these things, yes, there's tons of histamines, but that bacteria is going to repopulate your gut to make it so you have an environment to break down those histamines so that it's no longer an issue. So short term, it's kind of tough, but long term, you're going to reap these benefits of not dealing with histamine issues, and that is so worth it. So I highly recommend doing the intro and basically just introducing those fermented foods super slowly. You're probably going to have little reactions, but just try to power through and keep trying to introduce those new foods and try as much as you can to increase the dose. If you have more questions about this and you're like super confused, you can email me at groundedapproach@gmail.com. I'm happy to talk to you about it. I do consultations as well. I wanted to, get everything about histamines in one video, but there's just simply too much to talk about. And like I said, everyone's healing journey is different. Some people are sensitive to this or to this, and the way you manifest this microbiome issue is going to be different. For some people it's eczema, for some people it's diarrhea or thyroid issues or autoimmune disease or arthritis. So we really have to tailor it to your individual needs. So that's where it may be really helpful. But I hope just introducing you to histamines and kind of giving you an idea of how to go through gaps with a histamine issue is beneficial. And hopefully it's something you can look into more on your own, and you can devise a plan and a protocol, or even just knowing about the histamines, knowing that you're going to deal with these reactions, but long term it's going to bring tons and tons of healing. We're going through a histamine intolerance thing at the moment. My husband has pretty severe histamine intolerance, or at least I would say he did starting before the GAPS died. He had really, really severe histamine issues, and that manifests in chronic migraines about 3-4 times a week he was having. I'm happy to report we did intro, we introduced fermented foods slowly, and we still are. He can't overdo it on fermented foods. We're trying to build up every week just a little bit more, taking it slow, having tons and tons of grace on ourselves. No, slow and steady wins the race, but I'm happy to report that over time his migraines have gone down so significantly, and where he was having 3 or 4 migraines a week, he's now maybe having one every 3 or 4 weeks if he can keep his stress down and follows the GAPS diet well. We're really not dealing with migraines. So we've had amazing success, and I just wanted to share that with you guys. Hopefully give you some encouragement. I know that this is just like one more thing to deal with on the GAPS diet, but it really is make or break knowing about histamines, and it's going to affect your journey so much. So I would love to hear from you if you are on the GAPS diet or have done it. If you've dealt with histamine issues, what did you do? What did you find really beneficial? Are you still dealing with histamine issues? Have you been on the GAPS diet for a year and you've never heard of histamine issues? Please let me know. I'd love to hear from you, because we're all learning, and I'd love even just some helpful tricks of how to get rid of even a histamine reaction. Maybe you have some tips on that. So thanks so much for watching. I'd love it if you liked this video. If you found it helpful, you can like it, you can share it. But yeah, thanks for watching. I hope it was helpful. Hi, thanks for watching my video. You can feel free to comment or like below, or you can follow me on Instagram or on my website.